the water splashing on the islands and around in the bay there. So why don't we go ahead and turn the whites off and the blacks on. And what we'll do on this when the red is up there, we'll put a filter, a red filter on front of the lens, which will knock out the foreground blue on here. And that will give us a cleaner matte edge on the red area so the plate can be put in there.
There's dozens of ways to create any image. You can approach it from the point of view of taking a piece of equipment and say, what is the range of images I can produce with this piece of equipment? That's one way of doing it, and it's valid. There's another approach, which is to say, what is the image I want? My preferred method. What is the image I want, and what technology do I need to create it? The important facet of that, it's like any other tool. I use the analogy of an artist knowing how oil works on canvas, how to make glazes and transparencies, and how to work the paint. Once you've achieved technological prowess so that you know how to make sharp, accurate images, then you have to apply that and bring some artistry to it. And in fact, create something that is not only unlike they've ever seen before, but is also evocative and storytelling in its final quality. The most important thing about visual effects is it's still a facet of making a film. I think that the critical issue in the making of a movie is the team effort to achieve an end result being the story, the telling of that story. The actors, the art direction, the director, everyone involved and focused on that end product. And the motion control systems, the blue screen technology, the optical printers are all just tools that are used to tell that story.
Miniatures, motion-control cameras, and matte paintings are tools of special visual effects, and its evolution continues.
DreamQuest Images is a company which produced special effects for many films, including Total Recall and The Abyss. DreamQuest Vice President of Production, Keith Shartle.
DreamQuest Images is a company that started in a two-car garage about 11.5 years ago. And with 6 people, now we have up to and over 200 people working here, depending on the size of the project. What we're looking at here is a miniature that was constructed for the Nightmare on Elm Street Part 6 installment called Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. And this miniature was used for a point-of-view shot of a boy who is asleep and dreams that he's falling and falling and falling, and eventually falls right onto the roof of his own house, and then he wakes up. We're constructing a replica of the Hollywood Hills and the Hollywood sign. The miniature builders have done a chicken wire over a wood frame, and now they're plastering. And soon they'll be putting they'll be painting it and putting in the details of the scrub brush, and then mounting the Hollywood letters up on this miniature. This is going to be used for a dream sequence in a movie. And the scale is because we want real good size letters. We're going to fly very, very close to those letters. Some of the miniatures that we deal with are quite small, and some are medium size like this. And we've also had miniature landscapes that are 40 by 80 feet. In Total Recall, we had at least 2 that were that size, and they get to be quite large.
The miniatures for Total Recall had many challenges, as special effects supervisor Alex Funky can attest.
When we were working on Total Recall, we had to do a lot of work with explosions. But these are explosions of an unusual kind, because they can't be the kind of traditional pyrotechnics where you go in with a lot of high explosive and blow things up. These had to be explosions that were supposed to be on such an enormous scale that they had a kind of pushing effect. Instead of just blasting everything to bits in an instant, they had to have this tremendous kind of push, because we're talking about explosions that are almost on a planetary scale. Entire mountains being blown to pieces, enormous 5-mile square internal structures starting to activate, and giant chunks of ice the size of Greyhound buses being thrown through the air. All done in miniature. Okay, now, to do this, we went up to Ventura, to the state fairgrounds, to rent an enormous former blimp hangar, because that was the only space we found that was big enough to build this miniature, that had a large enough clear span. We need an 80-foot high ceiling. Built the miniature, the miniature mountain, which was exploded by means of air cannons and liquid nitrogen jets, steam, chemical smoke, just about every kind of device you can think of to blow things up. So we had all kinds of people, chemists working on it and engineers solving these problems. One, it's, as anything else, it's a kind of a plodding thing. You solve one thing and you discover that when you lift up that problem, there's 10 more hiding underneath it. And, but eventually you get it and then you keep refining it. Let's look again at the case of the scene where Quaid managed to turn on this vast, never-before-used alien reactor that's going to melt the entire core of Mars and release the atmosphere. Well, in order to do that, there's gigantic rods. They're supposed to be 100 feet in diameter. They come down into the ice, and they set it on fire, and they liquefy. And the problem is, okay, this is built as a miniature. It's quite a large miniature, as miniatures go, but it's still reasonable size. How do you generate something that appears to be red hot, but you can't actually heat it up because it's all made out of plastic? Well, we did this by using a material called Scotch-Lite, which behaves essentially like an almost perfect mirror. So that means if you put a very small but very bright orange light right next to the camera lens, when you turn that on, wherever you've put that Scotch-Lite, it comes back brilliantly, flaming hot. The beauty of this is that it doesn't involve any heat, which means you can build the set reasonably. You don't have huge lights burning that are going to melt everything. You can do it. It's completely heatless, and yet it looks red hot.
Visual effects is not only used to create fantasy worlds and fantasy environments. It can also be used, for example, with matte paintings to create historical places that no longer exist. And it can also be used to allow actors to be put in very dangerous situations, or seemingly so, without really ever endangering the actor. And we do that by shooting an actor in front of a blue screen, and then perhaps we have a miniature behind him. So there's a wide variety of things we can do there.
Building miniatures for motion pictures is no small feat. When we come back, we'll see the nautical side of special effects. Now, this is Falls Lake on the back lot of Universal Studios Hollywood. It's been used for everything from naval battles to horror films. Add a ship or two, some period costumes, you've got the Spanish Main. Add a few palm trees, some pretty girls, it's the South Pacific.
Hurricanes, typhoons, naval battles, pirate attacks, shipwrecks. These were some of the most visual and most difficult stunts to stage. As filmmaking became more sophisticated, producers decided that if viewers loved water stunts that took place above the surface, they'd really be wild about underwater stunts. Walt Disney's classic 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Giant squid astern, sir.
Movie audiences were awed and terrified by the attack of the monster squid. When the film was produced in 1954, the effects were state-of-the-art. But today's more sophisticated audiences might not be as easily taken in by the miniature work and puppetry. As James Mason and Kirk Douglas fought off this beastly marionette, little did they know that they were laying the groundwork for underwater film effects.
Well, that's how it used to look. The film The Abyss shows us that today's techniques can take us to new depths in underwater reality.
The Abyss presented some of the most difficult technical challenges that we've ever had at this company, because there was quite a variety of visual effects work, and we had to match exactly the look of really filming underwater. The area of design where we had the most input in The Abyss was the design of the two underwater alien crafts, the scout ship and then the Manta ship, which is a larger ship that comes up from the abyss that Lindsay encounters, and she's overwhelmed by the experience. Those were generic designs that basically the shape had been created, but the interior look was something that had to be a product of research and development. We worked with plasma tubes and neon and fiber optics that were lit by laser light to come up with a look unlike any kind of alien craft we'd seen in films prior to that. One of the sequences that was the most difficult and was the most gratifying because of the results was the sequence in which 3 one-man submarines are sent down into the Cayman Trough where a nuclear submarine has crashed. So that provided some problems for us. You had 3 one-man subs and then a big nuclear submarine to deal with. So now you've got this big nuclear sub that's the size of a Rose Parade float. It's gigantic. And then we have these 3 one-man subs. Now we need to find a way to have them fly around. So we expanded on a technology from the past, and that is we took a marionette and we gave it computer control. And we hung it from a gantry. There were 3 gantry cranes that moved along our stage floor, and each one had a model suspended from it. And these 3 one-man subs would float around the big nuclear sub and look very realistic. This was not shot underwater. This was actually shot dry, all in smoke. At the end of the show, the producer, Galen Hurd, sent a note to Hoyt Yateman, our visual effects supervisor, saying, "Congratulations on having survived the toughest shoot in history." And none of us would disagree with her on that point.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed our look behind the scenes. It's beginning to rain. We can always use a little rain around here. Well, as I was saying, I hope you've enjoyed our look at visual effects and Hollywood stunt makers. Keep safe.
Sorry, excuse me. Sorry, it's okay. Would you have any maps of the area?
Where are you going?
Flat Creek.
Well, it's straight ahead about 5 miles. Flooded out. You don't need a boat to go over there. You probably got one somewhere. Now, there's another way you can go. Right through the woods here, it's a half a mile. But you'll need a compass to go there. You should have one of them, too.
Oh, by the way, you wouldn't know where there's a men's room around